What's up everybody, Nate here, and I, like millions of other millennials before me, started my adult years by going to a 4-year university. However, like many other millennials, I didn't exactly have the money in order to go to school, which means I had to take on the dreaded student loans. And at one point, I had over $30,000 in student loan debt over the entire course of my college career. So today, I want to talk about the things that I learned, some things that you can avoid, and how our education system is starting to change in 2023. So now to kind of give you my story of college and my college loans. So I ended up going to college around 2014 and I went there for about 5 years. Now, the reason that it was 5 years and not the traditional 4 years is because I ended up switching my major about halfway through. When I started, I had this big dream that I wanted to be an educator, in particularly English language arts in elementary education. So this is what I had always wanted to do because I felt like I wanted to make a difference and I wanted to be the teacher that I never had growing up. Now, with me going to school, I didn't really have a lot of money. My parents didn't really have a ton of money to send me to school. It's not like I got a full ride. I mean, they did help out here and there, and for the majority of my school, I actually did live at home. So I had this dream, and the only way to become a teacher was to get an education degree. I mean, you couldn't just walk into a school and demand a teaching job. You had to have some sort of qualifications. You had to have student teaching. You had to have a degree. You had to have a lot of education hours. So in order to do that, I needed to go to school. Now, there is a school in mid-Michigan that is known as a really good teaching university. So I attended it and I started my classes. But before I even got to that point, I had to figure out the financial aid process. That involved a FAFSA, a free application for student aid. This allows people to take on a loan from the federal government in two different ways, a subsidized or an unsubsidized loan. The only way to get this loan money is to actually fill out the application, and then they basically tell you how much money is available based on your current financial need. They will award you a loan, and then you can use this money in order to pay for your college. So that is exactly what I did. I ended up filling out the FAFSA and I got loans to pay for college. And at the time, you know, you see those thousands of dollars, but you feel like it's so many years off. I mean, I wasn't going to graduate for a very long time, so I didn't really feel like I needed to make huge payments on that money right now. But that loan debt just kept piling up, and like I said, halfway through, I decided to change my major, which means I was going to be going to school for a little bit longer. Now, I've been out of school for many years now, but once I got out of school, I then had to start paying off my student loan debt. This created a lot of headaches for me, and don't get me wrong, when I was taking out this student loan debt, I knew exactly what I was doing. I knew how much I was taking out, and I knew that eventually I was going to have to pay it off. I actually happened to get a lot of subsidized loans when I was in college, which means the interest on those loans didn't actually start to accrue until I was out of school. But not every loan that I got was subsidized. Some were unsubsidized, which means that interest was piling up even while I was in school. I even had to take on a few private loans in order to go to school. And like I said, this just created a huge headache for me going forward. And now I have a lot of this debt. A lot of the debt has been paid off at this point, but I still have student loans that I need to bring down. Now, on to the things that I actually learned about taking on these loans. One thing that I highly recommend is if you're going to take on a student loan is that you try to pay as much as you can while you're in school. I was lucky enough to have a full-time job while I went to school, so I was able to pay down a lot of this debt before I actually left school. So the debt wasn't growing as quickly because, like I said, some of it was subsidized loans, so I was paying off the principal before the interest really started. That was a huge advantage for me because when I initially took on a lot of these loans, I kind of looked at the balance and was sort of freaking out. I mean, we're talking tens of thousands of dollars, and I had a full-time job, but it really didn't pay that well at the time. So I was trying to figure out how exactly I was going to pay these loans off. Luckily, I made small payments here and there over the course of years, and then when I got out of school, the total balance was a whole lot lower. And that helped my mental health a lot because the amount that I was going to now have to pay back was a whole lot smaller. Plus, it's really the interest that is going to get you on the loans, and this is true for any loan, whether you take out an auto loan, whether you take out a mortgage, student loans, whatever it is. The interest is what is going to keep you making those payments pretty much forever. So you need to try to pay off as much as you can to battle that interest if you're going to go the loan route. Think of it this way. It's like setting a glass under running water and then trying to drink out of that glass while the water is running. Yeah, you're going to be able to get a little bit out of that glass, but it's just going to continue to fill up and overflow at some point. You're not going to be able to drink fast enough in order to get all of the water out. So you have to stop the water from where it's running rather than from the actual cup itself. So paying down that interest as quickly as possible is the best thing that you can do. Now, the other thing that you need to keep in mind when it comes to student loans is that you should only use this money for your educational purposes. I had a ton of friends in college that ended up getting these student loan reimbursement checks from the federal government and then spent some of that money on education and then some of it on pretty much whatever they wanted. Now, you technically are not allowed to do this, but the government really doesn't check. They basically just cut you a check and then you spend the money how you want. Some of the money is going to go directly to the school to actually pay for your tuition, but then the school is going to give you back whatever is left and you can spend that money however you want to. Now, as somebody that went through this, it's very, very tempting to take this sometimes thousands of dollars in student loan reimbursement money and spend it on whatever you want to, right? Especially me being somebody that was 18 and 19 years old, having thousands of dollars in your bank account, well, you kind of want to spend it. This money should not be blown and it should not be spent on anything other than your education. And if you do have extra money that's left over, apply it to your student loan payments. The federal government and your personal loan provider, well, they're going to give you extra money. They're going to give you more than enough to cover all of your tuition because they want to get bigger payments out of you. They want you to take on more debt because that means more money for them down the line. A lot of the times you don't really have the choice, especially when it comes to the unsubsidized and subsidized federal student loans. They choose the amount on your behalf and then that's just what you get. But that doesn't mean that you have to then take this money and then blow it or put it right back into your education. You actually can take it and pay down some of your other student loan debt. That will mean that the amount that you've actually taken out shrinks pretty much immediately. And like I said, I know it sucks. Being 20 years old, you want to spend this money, but I recommend not doing that. And instead, paying down your principal and trying to pay down that interest as fast as possible with any leftover money that you have. And the final thing that I would recommend is that if at all possible, take on the smallest amount in student loans that you can. The interest and the principal on these payments is something that is going to hang around you for the rest of your life. It's debt that really doesn't go away until you fully pay it off. That can make it notoriously difficult to get rid of, and it's simply just going to bleed into the other opportunities you have later on in life. Even if you do go to school and get a really, really high paying job after you graduate, well, that student loan debt is still going to be hanging around, which means it's going to cut into your wealth building opportunities. It's going to cut into your ability to buy a house or to finance your dreams. Some people absolutely have to take on student loans if you want to go to a university, and I think this is something that is going to change over time because nowadays jobs don't necessarily require you to have an education. In fact, because our labor force is really, really tight in 2023, there are many places that are just foregoing a college experience altogether. The value that people are getting out of college is not as high as it was before, which means you're going to have a lot less people taking on student loans in the future. People are using YouTube and AI like ChatGPT in order to gain that same education, skills, and experience that they would have gotten by going to a four-year school. Obviously, there's some careers where you're always going to have a college degree, like if you want to become a doctor or a lawyer or an engineer. But not everything requires that anymore. The field that I wanted to go to did require a college education. Eventually, what I wanted to do after I switched my major, well, it didn't necessarily need a college education, but I was already so far in that I owed it to myself to finish my journey. I am so glad that I did. I want to make that very clear. I am so glad that I went to a university. University teaches you a lot of things that are hard to come up with the answers for by yourself. Yes, you can use ChatGPT to come up with the answers, but you have to be able to have the questions, and that is exactly what a university teaches you, how to ask better questions. I gained that perspective, and I really, really value my experience going to school, and if I had to go back, I would 100% make the exact same decisions. I would take on the student loans because I really valued that experience. So you may value that experience too. Even if you don't necessarily have to, you might value going to school over going to a trade school or learning on YouTube. It's really just going to depend on you and the value you feel you're going to get out of it. But like I said before, taking on as little student loan debt as you can is going to work out for the better for you because then you'll have more opportunities to build your wealth and you won't have all of this debt looming on top of you as soon as you get out of school. 10, 15, 20, and even 30 years ago, going to college was this big thing. It was a rite of passage and you needed a degree in order to get a lot of the jobs that were out there, and our economy was growing to be more accepting of college degrees. That is what my parents taught me money to work really hard and to go out and get a college degree. You have to get good grades so you can go to a good college so you can get a really good job, but the journey just is not the same in today's day and age. So if you're kind of in the situation where you're thinking about student loans, make sure you kind of look at every single aspect of student loans and understand exactly how they work. Figure out if the value you're going to get out of student loans makes sense for the amount that you're actually borrowing. College is definitely right for some, but it is not a necessity for everyone anymore. So student loans are a lot more flexible than they used to be before. You don't necessarily have to go down that journey. A lot of millennials did, but Gen Z and even Gen Y, well, they might not be faced with the same choice. But like I said, it really comes down to you whether you think that student loans are a necessity or a detriment to your future. But that is it for today's business and financial news breakdown. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to stay up to date with all the top business and financial news from around the country, our team puts together a free daily newsletter, and you can subscribe to it by clicking the link in this corner right here. And if you want to stay up to date with me and everything else happening in the business and financial world, I'm putting on updates 7 days a week over here on this channel, and I've actually got another one ready for you right here, so be sure to check that out before you go. That is it for me, everybody. Be kind out there, and I'll see you all in the next one.